Thank you. We are so glad to have you come in. Make yourself at home. I'm Chris Wilcox. This is Brett. My son David will be running in and out. My daughter Olivia is our support group. David and Brett are running across America for a GMO Free USA. And today marks, they have gone past the halfway mark. They have run more than halfway across the country. So we are so very glad that you can come and listen to Brett, and we really want to hear your ideas, your input, and have a good discussion.
Thank you. The halfway thing, that was important to us. That feels like we're really doing this. We get to Albuquerque and it's like, oh, there's so many things that could happen. Tucumcari, I don't know about this, but Wichita, it's like, okay, we really are doing this now. We look on the map and look, there's Wichita in the middle of the United States. We really have come from Huntington Beach all the way to Wichita. We started January 18th, and we're going about 20 miles a day, 6 days a week. And we're camping out at Rod Davis's place at, what's that called? Santa Fe Lakes, is that it? Out, I don't know, you all probably know where that is.
I live about 2 miles from there.
Excellent. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. So.
Okay, good. Come on over. I'm almost always there, except tonight. And if the phone rings, I may be leaving.
So I am a licensed professional counselor by profession. And what that means is when I get together with a group of people, usually I do a process-oriented thing. And so instead of standing up here and talking like I know all the answers, I open up to a discussion, and we find that the energy of the group and the information of the group, the knowledge of the group is often much better and much greater than me just standing up here and being a talking head. Although I could stand up here for a long time and be a talking head, but if I get doing that and I see that people's eyes are going to half-mast, then I know I'm not going in the right direction. But I do not have a set format. I don't have a set PowerPoint. The discussion that I gave in Albuquerque is different than the discussion that I gave in Liberal, and it'll be different than the discussion tonight because so much happens so quickly. If you're into the GMO thing, the GMO issues, and you follow it, you get up every morning and say, oh my heck, I cannot believe this, or you go, yay! And it's like every day this is happening, and so it's a huge, huge issue. And so I expect you all, being from Kansas, you have a special interest in the GMO issues in a way perhaps that people from California or Arizona or New Mexico didn't have. Because this is not only talking about your food, but it's talking about your land and everything that's going right around you in your backyard. And so maybe it feels more personal to you. I did wonder whether anyone might show up tonight who might want to say that I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a farmer and because I live in Alaska. Is there anyone who is here who would like to take issue with what we're doing, our run and our mission? All right. I wish there were.
I tried to get some.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you. And I don't say that sarcastically. I really do wish, because it would make the discussion more real. And instead of us talking to each other, we would be talking with people who feel differently. And obviously, there are people out there who feel differently about the issue. Although, as I posted in a blog fairly recently, as we ran across California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, we finally, when we came to Oklahoma, we met a man, who I will call Bob, who took issue with our run and our mission. It took us getting clear to Oklahoma to find that man. So seriously, I'm not making that up, I'm not exaggerating. Every person that we have met that knows about GMOs is opposed to GMOs. Now, that said, most people don't know anything about GMOs, and that's really the problem still. So many people out there have no idea, and perhaps they have so much faith in the government and in the system and the FDA and the USDA that they think things are in order, and they have no idea that when they go to Walmart that what they're taking home includes bacteria and things that would end up in the next to RAID and off pesticides if they were sold in a hardware store because they are registered with the EPA as pesticides. So people just don't know, generally speaking. The more we do this, the more we talk, the more people say, ooh, you've got to be kidding. I'm feeding this stuff to my kids, and this stuff really is registered as a pesticide. They wake up and unanimously, they say, yuck, I don't like this. And then I think you almost have to be a farmer to say, wait a minute, there's some great things with the technology, because farmers are using it and farmers will say it has helped them. So, and I am not a farmer, and it's not for me to say, well, it hasn't helped you in your business, but I do believe that whatever help is a short-term help, and it comes with long-term costs and long-term consequences. So, David has come in the back there. I want you to, David, would you stand up for just a second, please? Our odyssey started a couple of years ago when we showed David an internet blog about a 17-year-old girl named Jazzy Jasmine who had just finished her cross-country run across the United States. And David said, I want to do that. And we were foolish enough to listen to him time and time again. He said, I want to do that. And he had no idea what that meant. He had no idea what the distance was like. Last year he told my sister-in-law that it would be like running across the mountains of Utah, where he was doing high altitude camp at the time for cross-country training. And my sister-in-law says, Brett, he doesn't know anything about... Yeah, there's the saying, you're not in Kansas anymore. Well, we are in Kansas, and we're not doing high altitude camp in the mountains of Utah. So anyway, David is 15 years old. He is the youngest person to run across the United States since 1928. So it's quite a remarkable thing. I'm just an old guy, and we old guys do this sort of thing all the time. And if it doesn't kill me, no one's gonna think anything of it. But David is 15. It is a big thing for him. Olivia is 13, and we appreciate all the help that she has put into doing this. And Chris is the lead person on the support crew. And if you've ever attempted to do anything like this, don't. It's just. It is so time-consuming. I naively believed we would get up and run at 6 a.m., be done by 9, and have the whole day to fish and hang out. And as it turns out, we barely get the running done, and David is putting 5 or 6 hours a day into homeschooling, internet-based homeschooling. So we are very, very busy every single day, and even trying to put together a function like this and make this happen. This is way more than a full-time job. If I ever go back to a full-time job, it'll feel like I'm on vacation, because this is very busy. So that said, let me just cover just a few of the basics. I was critiqued in the past at a former site. Someone on the internet said that I failed to explain what a GMO is. So could someone concisely cover up that faux pas for me? I'll bring the mic around. If someone wants to stand up, and I'll bring the mic, and you can talk to the camera. Explain what a GMO is, if you wouldn't mind. You want me to bring this mic around?
Oh, I don't think it's going to go that far.
That's all right. Angie's good at this.
Oh, yeah. A GMO is a genetically modified organism. In particular, the corn has had multiple bacteria added to it. There's corn, soy, cotton, some zucchini, some squash, sugar beets, canola. What am I missing?
Papaya.
7 papaya. I just stay away from it now.
I think we're pretty close there.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about the rest of them, but corn I'm surrounded by. So I know about the corn.
Let me ask you a question or two. So could GMO happen in nature?
No, absolutely not.
How does this happen? How do they do this?
In a lab. They took the bacteria that they found was resistant to Roundup, and then they injected it into the corn, and then they injected the E. coli bacteria. Is that right? E. coli? And the other one I don't know the name of. And they got them to cross. In nature, the bee takes the pollen from one plant to another and it crosses it naturally, or you can hybridize. But that you can't mix species in
Right.
nature.
So in the real world, we have corn mixing with corn, which produces corn.
Correct.
But a GMO is one plant and another plant, or two or three plants, or animals.
Or animals, yes.
From other species, bringing them together in a way that nature could not do.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that's the danger that I understand is, I mean, you wouldn't mix plant and animal and then want to ingest it in any form.
Okay. Well, you're doing so good. I'm just gonna sit down and just let you keep going. But why on earth would a company say, oh, here's a bacteria that doesn't die in Roundup. Let's put this bacteria in our food. What motivation is there to do that?
Money.
Can you explain that?
Because if you control the seed, you control the food. And if your plant goes out and pollinates, cross-pollinates with every other corn around you, then there is no other corn, and then they own the corn market. They dominate it. And you can't get around that. I tried to grow corn last year, but I was surrounded by it, and so mine got cross-pollinated.
You've got to be mistaken. If this creates a corn that's got bacteria in it, and say I'm an organic corn farmer,
Right.
and it crosses over into my land,
Right.
and it contaminates my corn, wouldn't I take them to court and earn buku bucks?
You would think so.
Doesn't that work that way?
No.
What
No.
are we in Kansas or what?
It's just the opposite. That's
Monsanto
correct.
says they own that.
Correct. They own that.
They own that seed, so when it cross-pollinates with yours, you're stealing from them.
But surely if this went up to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court would rule in favor of the farmer who had been contaminated or victimized by this mutant corn, right?
No.
Because
No.
the farmer doesn't have the money to do that.
And the Clarence Thomas was on legal counsel for Monsanto, so nothing gets through to there.
And Clarence Thomas sits on the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
And he actually ruled on the Oscata versus Monsanto case.
Correct.
And found that the organic corn farmers had no protection and no reason to even protest.
Correct.
Or to take it to.
The closest win was Percy out of Canada, and he didn't actually win, but he wasn't found to be liable for any money. And then in small claims court, he recouped about $600 and something for paying his neighbors to come pull it out of his yard and sent them the bill. So that was as close to a win as there's been that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And I'm on it every day. I mean, I study it every day, so.
Yes, I'm well aware of it. Angie and I are Facebook friends, and boy, she's putting the information out there all the time. Okay, so we've covered what a GMO is. Yes.
What they've actually done is taken the,
Come on up here, please, if you wouldn't mind.
okay.
And there's the camera.
What they've done is they've taken the DNA and they unraveled it, and they pulled out certain parts of the DNA. And they don't know what that DNA does when those parts are missing. And then they inserted DNA from fish, bacteria, and I even heard somewhere even human DNA, and they stuck it back into that DNA of the corn, and then they put it all back together. And when they shoot this stuff into the DNA, they use guns that, in a petri dish, it's like using a small little .45 caliber, and they shoot it in there, so they're not sure exactly where this DNA is going into the other DNA of the corn, so they really don't know what genes they've turned on or what genes they have turned off. So it's caused sterilization, it's caused all kinds of health problems in independent studies.
Now, I'm sure you're mistaken, because when I read Monsanto's literature, Monsanto says that it's precise and it's accurate. I get the impression that they take the gene and they carefully insert it exactly in the same spot every single time, and they know exactly what that gene is going to do.
There's so many thousands of genomes and parts of that gene that nobody knows what exactly parts actually do what in that gene.
But Monsanto knows, because I read it. I did. They said people started having allergic reactions to it, and Monsanto's response to that was, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And it actually goes into our DNA. The DNA from the corn, when you eat it, actually passes the wall and gets into our cells and changes our DNA too.
So I'm hearing you say that the DNA, we can actually assimilate the GMO DNA, and I have heard Jeffrey Smith talk numerous times about our gut bacteria assimilating the Bt DNA, and then our gut bacteria becomes a living pesticide factory, which means we're producing, our gut bacteria is producing Bt, which is designed to poke holes in your stomach. That's obviously not something you want to be happening in your stomach, right? Okay, so we've covered what a GMO is. We've covered how it's not precise, it's not safe, in spite of what the propagandist says. We can go in numerous directions now, and some people have spoken about Mike Pompeo and the Safe and Accurate Food Act, which Mike just barely sponsored that maybe 8 or 10 days ago. Is there anyone who would feel comfortable coming up and talking about that? It's Don, right?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I did have the opportunity to address Representative Pompeo last Thursday at a meeting. He was prepared, because I gave advance notice we'd be discussing it, and he defended it, as you might expect. He feels that GMOs, one, are safe, two, they've fed billions of people, so we should be thankful for them, and three, he had absolutely no answer for the states' rights issue. Well, he did. He had one issue. States' rights, meaning every state should be able to legislate labeling laws if we so choose. Several, I think 2 states are, several other states are in the process of doing that, and he said it would cause a hodgepodge of regulations throughout the country. One, you simply adopt the strongest legislator, state standard. Two, if you ever shop for alcohol in a different state, you already know there's 50 different state laws. That's insurance the same way. Every state is different, whether it's auto, health, or life. They're all different. So that's not a good argument. It's simply that whoever is his sponsor tells him what to do, in my humble opinion. Maybe he heartily believes that. Certainly on the Wichita Eagle has printed a number of letters that are pro on the bill. They've all been signed by trade associations or farmers who probably have a vested interest in those products. We don't. As consumers, all I want to know is it safe to eat or not? I consider GMO foods not to be safe to eat. I've been to every health food store in town and asked the same question. It's very difficult for these manufacturers to know exactly, precisely what's going in to from the raw ingredients that they're producing. This store and many others would love to market only non-GMO products. Mm-hmm. That's not an option right now. We need strong labeling laws. I see no reason why we can't have strong labeling laws. Scientists once told us that tobacco was good for you. Now we know different. A pack of cigarettes tells you so. We are not inventing something new. The laws already exist. We simply have to say GMO foods need to be labeled so that we, as consumers, can avoid them, or those people who feel proud of them can buy them and eat them. That's fine. That's it. But as consumers and as people who live in Wichita, we need to contact Representative Pompeo. I have his phone number in my pocket, and I'd be more than happy to share it. He has a Washington office and a local office. He needs to hear from everybody. And his office is fairly good about responding back. You may not like the answer, but he does respond. So he needs to hear from more people. He seems to feel that the farmers support it. This being a farming state, then he has the support to do this. I disagree, and he needs to hear from a lot of people.
Thank you, Don.
Sit in on his office.
Especially prior to the June the 2nd, when there's a deadline for filing an opposition to it. I think there are other candidates considering.
Especially prior to June the 2nd, when there is a deadline?
For filing an opposition, running against him in the primary.
Okay, a deadline for running against him in the primaries.
He needs to hear from people.
All right, Don says he needs to hear from people. Amen to that. So there's a lot of points, a lot of directions we could go with that. I find it fascinating that to me, the farmers have become consumers of the biotechnology seed and the technology. They are the consumers of the technology. And what's bizarre to me is traditionally we've always thought of farmers as people who feed their neighbors. And now we find ourselves in a situation where farmers are growing crops that you, the neighbors, don't want. You don't need them and you don't want them. And so farmers are now in this bizarre situation, I believe, because they have been false advertising led them down the golden brick road of biotechnology and GMOs, telling them how wonderful it was, telling them that it was the same thing as other forms of hybridization. It was just another form of crossbreeding. And that it would save them money, it would increase yields, it would decrease pesticides. Sign me up. You know, if I was a farmer, I would have been the first one to sign. And farmers, I don't think, you know, farmers are like, in another realm, farmers are like doctors. Doctors get their information from the pharmaceutical company, and the pharmaceutical company tells the doctors if a new medication is good and how it's good. If it's bad, they don't tell you that. Well, Monsanto tells the farmers how a product is good, how a seed is good. And they talk up all the good points and they don't tell you about any of the potential pitfalls.
A lot of Monsanto's lawyers are in the FDA.
A lot of Monsanto's lawyers are in the FDA. I'm sure you're mistaken about that. That could not be right. This is the United States of America. This is not Monsanto land.
Yes.
We call it the turnstile.
The turnstile.
Yeah, they just go around, you know, they go from one to the other, and, you know.
No, that cannot be right. You're saying that they go from positions like at Monsanto and then they work in the regulatory agencies, or they end up lobbying, they go back and forth and take jobs back and forth around and around like a turnstile?
Yes.
Well, I am a farmer, I'd bet you $1 to a donut.
That cannot be right.
Well, and I can tell you that there's just like the pharmaceutical companies coming into the doctor's offices and offering them all sorts of perks to do stuff. These guys are out in their great big four-wheel drive trucks with their four-wheelers on the back, checking every field. They're sending farmers on trips. They're giving them incentives to buy these seeds. I see them every day. I'm surrounded by these farms where I live, and I see this happening every day.
You make that sound kind of insidious or evil, but I'm sure there is some good that comes out of it somewhere.
Well, they've also got, when the seeds, they go to the patent office and they say, these seeds are different, so we need a patent on them. They go to the patent office and they say, the seeds are different, we need a patent on them, they're ours. But then when they go to the FDA, they say, no, it's not different. The corn is corn. It's corn, it's vegetables, you can eat it. So they do this two thing. You know, is it different to get the patent so they can sue farmers or anybody who takes their seed? Or is it corn? Is it vegetables? Is it viable food?
Yeah, they would probably use phrases like substantially equivalent.
Yes.
They would say that it's not different at all until they go to the patent office, and then it's so different that it deserves to have a patent. And and then that absurd situation happens when my GMO corn contaminates Rod's organic corn, and Rod, you're just, I've got you, man. I mean, you've lost all of your generations worth of work. Your crop is now contaminated, and you can only sell it as a GMO crop after that. And so too bad. That's the way it works in America, at least, and for now, and it has for many years. Okay, what about the Mike Pompeo and probably the leading piece of propaganda that comes out of the biotech industry is that what is the number one lie associated with the biotech crops?
Feeding the world.
Feeding the world, yes. Have you ever heard that phrase before?
Yeah.
We were running through Kansas not too long ago, and we saw a sign near someone's farm, and it said Farm Bureau feeding the world. And I took a picture of it, as I do, and it's corn syrup. Or I need to go pick up some more GMO canola oil. I have not found that person yet. And why? Because there's no benefit. There's zero benefit, and there's a whole lot of risks, and virtually every day we learn of new studies that are showing us new risks that make it worse. We learned just 2 weeks ago that mothers are now, when they breastfeed their babies, what are they feeding them? Glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. And I don't even like to use the word glyphosate because glyphosate is, we've been told it's benign, but we now know that glyphosate is more than glyphosate. Glyphosate is glyphosate plus all the adjuvants. And when it chelates all the minerals in the soil, and you get glyphosate plus all the heavy metals and everything, and you get that in your system, it's much more toxic. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse. And Dr. Don Huber again said that DDT is a pittance compared to glyphosate. And now we can just trust that mother's milk is tainted with glyphosate. That's something we didn't even know 2 weeks ago. I mean, I bet there were people that knew it, but now the consumers know it. Now mothers know it. And remember, the mothers that did the testing, these were mothers that were up on the issue. These are mothers that know about GMOs, and so they're the ones who got the test to test the milk. These are not the typical mothers that wouldn't have any idea about it and would be feeding Fruit Loops to themselves and their kids for breakfast and stuff like that. So I would imagine the percentage of glyphosate would be higher in the standard population, and I would predict that that's going to happen when testing gets expanded. So I just want to just reiterate one more time, we're not feeding the world with GMOs, and in fact, we know if we follow the food supply, if we take it to Africa, if we take it to Colombia with the Colombia United States Free Trade Agreement, that we dump the subsidized GMO crops in these countries, we've got farmers who are barely making it from rainstorm to rainstorm, and we dump all this stuff in their country. They cannot compete. They're wiped out. They lose their farms. They end up going to the city, putting up their piece of tin in the shanty town, begging. And so instead of feeding the world, we actually create starvation through this process. And that there's the foreign debt process where you put a third world nation in debt, and then if they do have any extra grain, you force them to sell it to pay off the debt. And when in the lean years there's no grain to feed them, what have you got? Famine. And so the whole system, it seems, is not designed to feed the poor, and it actually does create famine in the end.
Well, I see that it's taking land back here also. There's fewer and fewer farmers farming bigger and bigger territory. There's fewer farmers farming bigger territory. Where I live, there was, on every 80-acre plot, there was a house. Well, now there's the remains of a house, and that's been taken into larger groups of land. So you have one farmer farming 2,000 acres now. And those people can't live off the land anymore, so they're forced to move into cities to take jobs, and there are no jobs anymore, so those are the people that are having to work at Walmart and McDonald's. So the same thing is happening here. That's where our middle class is gone. It's just gone down, down, down as we've all been herded into cities here.
Okay.
With the Mexican immigrants, what's ironic is they end up leaving the tin shack, heading to the border, and in many cases end up working for the same companies that took their farms away. And you haven't even touched on India. I mean, that was, they should be in front of the world court for that. There's 20,000 Indian farmers that committed suicide because of Monsanto fertilizers that were basically forced on them.
Yeah.
And at first it was good, and they found out it killed the soil. They lost their farms and committed suicide out of shame.
Okay.
And now kidney disease.
Kidney disease, yes.
In Africa, I can't remember if it was Nigeria or Niger, there's 5 countries that had famine, and so the U.S. shipped them corn. I can't remember if it was Nigeria or Nigeria. They said, no, ground it up. They knew it was GMO. They didn't want their farmers planting it. So they said, ground it up. The U.S. refused to ground up the corn. They said, no, we don't want it. 5 other countries stepped in and fed them, gave them non-GMO food, and helped supply, save that country. But yeah, I read that somewhere.
How long was that list that I posted the other day on Facebook of countries that wouldn't take GMOs?
Oh, gosh, it's up to 60 countries, 64 countries.
I think it's 64 that label GMOs, and it's something in the 20s that out and out ban them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Asia, there was
GMOs, and we talked about the livestock and the way they're raising it. Actually, the house right behind where you're staying, the gray house, there's a truck driver that lives there And about 4:30 in the morning, he's going to be leaving, and he'll probably wake you up. But what he does is he drives a semi, and he goes to the feedlots and hauls off the dead cows. And they haul 5 semi-loads a day on average out of those feedlots of dead cows. You know, what I wonder about is the cows that didn't quite die, but they're now in the grocery stores.
Those are the ones that you see being taken in a four-wheeler with the prongs on it.
Exactly, yeah. So anyway, I think part of that is the sanitary conditions that they do, but also the foods that they're feeding them. I mean, it's not what they're made to eat.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. And we know, I'm sure many of you have heard Jeffrey Smith and others talk, Howard Vliger, who is a farmer out of Iowa. If you have not watched his presentations, get on YouTube, Vliger, V-L-I-E-G-E-R, and watch his presentation, because he is a farmer. And he ran the numbers, he crunched the numbers back in the 90s. He ran GMO corn next to conventional corn. He did it for a couple of years, and it didn't wash. He was losing money on the GMOs. And then he and Judy Carman, who is a researcher out of Australia, they dissected the pigs and they opened up the stomachs, and he's got pictures of the pigs fed the GMO corn versus the pigs that were fed the conventional corn. And it's not a pretty picture. So because they actually did the study carefully enough to show that it was not just the glyphosate, but it was the GMO technology itself. There's something inherent in the technology itself that caused inflammation in the pigs. You could see the ulcerated stomachs in there. We know Howard Vliger and Jeffrey Smith tell numerous stories of farmers who gave animals the opportunity side by side to eat GMO versus conventional, and the animals actually refused to eat the GMO when given a choice. And when, of course, when these cows are fed GMO their whole life, the experiment's over because they've been eating it and their natural sensitivities are gone. But a first-time situation, you've seen the pictures of the GMO corn nailed onto a tree next to a conventional corn, and in the springtime the conventional corn is eaten raw. The GMO corn is still there. You've heard the stories of the farmers that put the corn in the barn, a sack of GMO next to a conventional sack, and in the spring they go out there and the GMO sack is there ready to plant and the conventional sack is gone. The mice got to it. And somehow there is some innate wisdom. We don't know exactly what it is, some smell that they're picking up or something. We really don't know, but we do know that it's not food to them. I mean, it's not a question of whether it's safe to eat, it's just not even food.
We do know
the scientists that are doing these studies, they really are the heroes out there, the Seralini, Howard Vliger out of Iowa, there's Judy Carman, boy, there's numerous others that are escaping me right now. I read a new one the other day, I'm sure you saw this, Angie, others of you saw this, a woman, her name is Dawn Forsyth, and she used to be a lobbyist for a pesticide company that Sanos or something like that. It later became assimilated by Syngenta. And her job was to promote pesticides and discredit anyone who said anything opposed to pesticides. And she said that they were taught very carefully how to do that. And when you're talking to a scientist who is dissing GMOs and dissing pesticides, you don't talk about the science. You talk about the person. You assassinate the character of that person. You, in the case of Tyrone Hayes, who found that atrazine, which is now the leading pollutant in our drinking water, they went after him personally. There were threats. They brought up issues about his sexuality or what he was doing or whatever. And so anything you could do to discredit the scientist and assassinate the character of the scientist, that's the way these scientists deal with science against them. And it's so fascinating because I've noticed that the Monsanto, Syngenta, and the big bad boys, they love to say this is all science-based and we need to have science-based regulatory agencies. And they hold up the word science almost as if it's their God, almost as if it's their religion. And yet the science that they hold up it's in real life. Scientists seldom use the words we know this beyond a shadow of a doubt, or things like that. And when they're talking about the GMO technology, they'll say, yeah, there are thousands of studies that have proven this is health. Mike Pompeo's statement, millions of people have eaten of this and not one single person has gotten sick. You know, when you hear a person say that, that's not science. You can't feed organic carrots to 1,000 people without someone having an adverse effect. Someone's going to get sick from organic carrots. So if someone's getting sick from organic carrots, you can bet that someone's going to get sick from eating glyphosate, or someone's going to get sick from eating the GMO. So when they say billions served and no one's ever got sick, that's not science. And so they go into their talking points, and when you hear them talk like that, you say, oh, whoops, that's not science at all. And then when you've got real scientists who are not connected to the technology, we have the power, as they did in Europe in the 90s, we have the power when enough of us wake up to say, no, thank you. I'm not going to buy that today. Or I'm going to grow my own food, and it's going to be GMO free. I'm going to make sure I get my seeds from Baker Creek or one of the other seed companies that has GMO free seeds. We're going to raise our own stuff, we're going to bottle it, we're going to do as much as we can to just make the system irrelevant. And we're going to do what we can as activists. We're going to teach each other. We're going to tell each other, basically all we're saying is, hey, why don't we grow food the way our grandparents did? Because obviously they work for money. And if it wasn't making a profit for them anymore, then they would source their ingredients from non-GMO ingredients. When enough people walked away from commercial meat, we could then get changes in the system. We could then go back to a system where if you eat meat, you would have a greater chance of getting meat that was clean and healthy. So I really think that's where the answer lies. It's not, we appreciate the scientists and what they're doing and how many of them are literally putting their lives on the line, and certainly their careers, many of them, their lives, for standing up.
You probably have friends that are on there.
And we also have March Against Monsanto Wichita, a group on there.
Which would be actually better.
Drug political service? Drug political circus?
Circus.
Yes. Because we mix ecology in with politics. So we kind of make a circus out of it. I mean, the last two marches, we had about a week, 5 days notice. And that's not enough time. Okay?
Right, and we'll have flyers to hand out this time too.
We will have flyers to hand out, and I haven't told you this yet, but you're going to go through all the issues and make up the whys and why nots for the sheets of paper that I'm going to hand out while I'm sitting there in the hot sun next to my truck. Okay.
Thank you so much. You guys are a gift to your community because you're getting out there and you're changing things. You're raising your voices. The March Against Monsanto last May was described as the world's largest political movement ever. I'm not sure whether that's accurate or not, but I've heard
It's worldwide.
worldwide.
Yeah,
Well, but Wichita was a part of that.
Yes.
650.
There were about 400 different marches last May, and we hosted one in Sitka, Alaska, where we came from. And all told, it was about 2 million people that marched. And I think those that weren't involved in it, there were probably 2 or 3 that heard about it because the mainstream media pretty much did their best to ignore it. So it's, we can't count on the mainstream media to get the word out there, but because you're doing it, and because we have social media nowadays, we're able to do things that we couldn't have done otherwise. The March Against Monsanto originated, I believe, in about a 6-week time period, where it went from a suggestion from Tammy Canal saying, we should have a March Against Monsanto, and boom, 6 weeks later we have 2 million people marching, which shows the power of that movement and the power of social media. You can see why the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is so important because that's another avenue that the big boys are going out there to say, you know, the internet's causing us problems. We need to shut down the internet. We need to make sure that people can't communicate as freely as they are, because it's sure getting in the way of our pocketbooks. And so the TPP is another big issue to be working on and be aware of. I should mention I've got a little bit of literature over here. I've got a little bit from Jeffrey Smith from the Institute for Responsible Technology. I've got Free USA. When we announced that we were going to do our run for a GMO Free USA, I had a phone call with the organizers of GMO Free USA, and they said, yes, Brett, we'd like to support you with what you're doing. And they have put out graphics from time to time promoting what we're doing, including the event that we're holding here tonight in Wichita. So I'm deeply indebted to them. I'm wearing a Boycott Kellogg's button, and if you want to learn about boycotting Kellogg's, talk to Diana Reeves on the internet with GMO Free USA, and she'll let you know that boycotting Kellogg's is not that Kellogg's is the great Satan of GMOs, but they're a big company, and if you can get one company that finds that their bottom line is going down because people are saying no to them, and they say, you know, maybe it's time to listen to the people. If they would then source from non-GMO ingredients, and then they would watch their bottom line go up, and all the other big boys would say, maybe it's time for us to learn something from Kellogg's, and we would see the other big food manufacturers follow suit. So if it's too overwhelming to boycott everybody, anything that's got GMOs in it, just remember Kellogg's. If it's got the word Kellogg's on it, don't buy it. It's that easy. And Kellogg's may think, oh, those guys are so mean to us. Well, someday they may thank us because we would help them lead the curve toward what the people actually want. We ate it at Chipotle's last night. We said, no, this is GMO free, right? And they said, yeah, it is. And I don't know whether they knew whether it was or not.
I doubt the meat is yet.
Isn't it?
I doubt the meat is yet. They said by 2016, I think.
Okay.
That's what it was.
But anyway, companies like that are leading the way. They're showing that we don't have to wait for the government to clean up the act. They can say, we're going to go GMO free. And so we enjoyed dinner last night, and I actually took a picture of the back of the T-shirt of the woman who we gave her the credit card, and it said on the back. What exactly did it say? You can bet I'm going to post that
Have you
picture.
seen the Farmed and Dangerous series that they put out on Hulu? There's 4 episodes, I think.
Little animation pieces?
Oh, no, this is a sitcom, well, a drama sitcom. It's actually very funny.
Chipotle puts this out.
Yes.
I have not seen that.
Farmed and Dangerous,
Farmed and Dangerous
on Hulu.
Thank you for that. We will definitely
It's very good. We watch it over dinner.
Thank you. That's beautiful. So we've got the Boycott Kellogg's buttons here. There's a book there called Holy Cow that a woman in Flagstaff wrote, and she gave us...
Gallup.
Pardon me?
Gallup.
Gallup, thank you. Thank you. She gave us some copies. She said sell those and keep the money to help you with your venture. I've got books here where we're hosting, and we do thank Natural Grocers for hosting this for us. This is very nice for them. It's a very appropriate setting for us. So we're glad to be here. But we've got the book. We need donations. You can donate online. If you really felt strongly about donating to us, we might be able to meet you in the parking lot. Okay, any other points that need to be said here?
Oh, I was going to say, a couple of years ago, we had a march against Coke Industry and the XL pipeline. And I found out later that at first the local media covered us for a little bit. And then Coke called all the media outlets and said if they covered us again, they wouldn't get any more money. So after that, they would not cover us. Just will not cover you because Coke said they wouldn't give them any more money.
The Eagle didn't cover the first Monsanto march. And so on the second one, when we left the staging area, we stood in front of the Eagle on the other side of the street for about 15 minutes chanting at them.
Yes.
But
We took the whole corner.
Well, that was Douglas and Broadway, but we we stood in front of the eagle, but it didn't work. They still didn't. We still didn't make the next one. I can virtually guarantee you, we will make the paper.
Good.
I hate to keep saying this, but I'm sure you guys are mistaken. This is not the United States of the Koch brothers.
Yes, it is.
I'm certain.
The way the law is written, the United States is a corporation. The United States itself is a corporation.
I call
Where
it
the
the
law's
United
written.
Corporations of America.
The United Corporations of America. You guys are so mistaken. This is when I was a kid, I used to sing this song called from Woody Guthrie called "This Land Is My Land, This Land Is My Land," and you guys are violating everything that I was taught to believe as a kid. And I'm not sure that I'm going to ever run through Wichita again. In fact, I think we're just going to keep running this thing, because this is not turning out well for us.
Oh, I do thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it, that what you're doing. Thank you so much. Wish I could do it.
Thanks. It's quite an honor to do what we're doing, and it's quite a cool thing. If you can imagine living in a 20-something foot trailer with 2 teenagers and 2 puppies, and try to end every day being a little less insane than you were when you started the day. And I'm not sure that we actually achieved that, but it's been an incredible experience for our family. We're halfway done. We're scheduled to finish by mid-July, and then we have to go back to the real world and get jobs again, and hopefully someone will hire us. Who knows, after doing this, whether we will be deemed as fit or sane.
Want to go back into that world again?
That may be true.
I want to go out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. The door is wide open right now. Any other comments from anyone?
Oh, one more thing. I've heard that the best way to feed the world is individual organic gardens.
Permaculture.
Permaculture and 4 foot by 4 foot gardening. There's a guy who created a book. It's called a 4 foot by 4 foot gardening, the way square gardening, and square foot gardening, and it could feed a family of 4 for a year. And they said that's the way to combat hunger around the world.
You know, a way to extend that,
What?
use refrigerators.
Yeah.
I used to have a 3/4 acre organic farm, and I had an operation a few years back. I've had to cut back. But one of the things I've been working on is for urban gardeners. And this wasn't my idea, I read it somewhere, but I've experimented with it. I was harvesting lettuce in early February. Now, it was a mild winter one year. You take an ice box, a refrigerator that's going to the dump or sitting in someone's yard waiting for a kid to climb in and suffocating stuff. And you take that and you take the latches off, you leave the door on it, you fill the bottom with plastic milk bottles full of water because you don't need dirt that deep. You put the dirt and the compost in, your own blend, and you lay it out. You can start lettuce earlier and harvest it later. You can start it earlier for your autumn planting, because during the heat of the day, all you do is go out and close the door. You lose a little light, so what? It hasn't bothered them yet. Gardening tip of the day.
Do you post on that, or do you talk about that on your site or anything?
We talk about a variety of things on the site, so yeah, some of it does concern gardening on my timeline in particular.
Okay.
You should post that out to the Wichita March page. Because I always post a lot of gardening and farming stuff.
I gave Susan's doing a huge thing this year
Yes,
with Urban Garden.
yes. Yeah.
I gave her 250 tomato plants.
Right.
Okay. We blog at runningthecountry.com. It's runningthecountry.com. We've written it down on the back of the seed packets here. Make sure you grab one of those with our website, runningthecountry.com. We also have the Facebook group, Running the Country, and the Facebook page, Running the Country. So, and if you want to friend me, please do. I'd be honored to do the Facebook friend thing and stay in touch that way as well. We are deeply indebted to all of you. You know, we're doing a cool thing and we get to be in the limelight, but what you're doing here in Wichita counts. And when I go out, you know, I don't go out and say, we're cool. I go out there and say, look at what these scientists are saying. Look at what they're doing in Wichita. Look at what they're doing here. So we just talk about the movement and what the people are doing and how the movement is growing and how it's a people-based movement. It's people that are going to reclaim the food system. It's not the corporations. And so I just go out there and we talk about that. So we're literally running on the shoulders of all the people who have been fighting this battle for 20 years. We're really newbies to this subject, and deeply indebted to everyone who has been fighting for so long. And so we're glad you're here. We're honored to be here with you, and we thank you for this warm reception. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
I'll send you a picture of the Monsanto wagon.
Thank you.
Thank you.